Hi, welcome to the Microsoft Virtual Academy course Creating Games with Project Spark. This is Module 3, using the tutorials. I'm Stephen Howell, and in this section we're going to explore the Project Spark tutorial system, which shows us the different steps for creating games in more detail. Now, on our agenda, we're going to start off with accessing the tutorials. They're in the Create section, and it then takes us into the 5 main parts of Project Spark game creation. And what that means is that nearly every game has 5 stages, which you don't have to do in any particular order, but they involve creating your game world, choosing your characters, and then deciding what the goals in the game are and how all the characters interact. There's going to be a little bit of coding in this section, and that's a good thing, because when we're looking at coding, it can be quite intimidating the first time because everyone hears that learning to program is very hard. The good news is in that Project Spark, coding is presented in a very straightforward and interesting way that I think you'll find is easy to get started with and lets you create very interesting games. So let's get straight into accessing the tutorials and the first part of Project Spark game creation now. So we're here in Project Spark and we're going to go into the Create section, and when I select Create, you'll see the Empty World, the World Wizard, the Crossroads, and the Tutorials section. We're going to select Tutorials, and inside there it's going to bring us along a path, a little journey, and every step of the way it's going to tell us what to do. Now we'll still have the ability to put our own flavor on what we're doing, but this particular game that we're going to create is going to be led by Project Spark. That's what the tutorial is. It's a series of steps asking us to do particular things. So this is not the usual way you'll use Project Spark, but it's a good way to get started. So it says this is just the beginning. Experience your first taste of creating an adventure game with this tutorial to help you get started. Step by step you'll make a hero, battle enemies, and craft an adventure. To be continued. And more tutorials are coming soon. So I press A button on my controller to play, and we'll see that it's creating a brand new empty world with a brand new hero for me. The very first thing it does is ask me what type of input type. Now if you have a touchscreen like a Surface Pro, you can use the touch interface. If you don't have an Xbox controller, you might use the keyboard and mouse. I have an Xbox controller and I prefer to use it, so I'm going to select controller by pressing the A button. So it starts off with, at the very top, 3D adventure progress. So it's telling me the different steps I'm going to go through. I'm going to create a hero first of all. Later on I'll add an enemy, I'll make a mountain, I'll make a path, and I'll create a goal. Now if we look down, you'll see that there's a flashing A, and it's got a series of steps for us to do, and each step the way it tells us what buttons to press, and it'll wait for us to do them. Now it's easy to get a little bit lost the first time you use Project Spark because there's a lot going on, a lot in the interface, and that's why it's a good idea to follow the tutorial. So it says, have you ever made a game? Nope. Well, time to change that. Get ready to create a hero, an adversary, and a world to explore. So we press the A button, and it says the hero's journey begins with a hero. And now you'll see that there's a flashing blue arrow which is swirling around on an icon on the left hand side of the screen. And it says press the A button to switch tools, then use the left stick to navigate to the prop tool, and then press A again to select it. So I'm going to highlight with my mouse here just to show you that I can move my mouse and I can type on the keyboard, but when I start using my Xbox controller, you'll see that the glowing mouse dot disappears. So what's happening here? Well, I've got my left analog stick, and when I move it, I can move the cursor. So the cursor is that glowing orb which you can see behind the instructions. And when I press the right stick, I'm moving the camera left and right. I'm orbiting around the cursor. So what the instructions tell me to do is press the A button, and what will happen then? Well, I'll switch to select mode. So I'm now in tool select, and you'll see that a paintbrush icon is currently selected. And I don't know what that does yet. I can go up here, I can go down here, and there's so many different sections. So of these four, it wants me to navigate to the prop tool, which is what I'm on now. And you can see that it's glowing, and I should press A to select it. So it now tells me that prop mode is how I add interesting objects and life to my world. It's also where I go to edit or remove them. And now I'll really be bringing the world to life. So I press A again, and it says the prop palette below contains the most recently used items. The arrow just above it takes you to the prop gallery, where just about anything can be found. Okay, so I press A again, and now it wants me to use the D-pad. Now, if you haven't used an Xbox controller much, if you look at it, you'll see that there's two analog sticks on the left and right, and in between them there is a circle with a cross on it. And this is the D-pad, the directional pad. And if I press up in it, I'm pressing the up part of that cross. So I press up. What's this? So there are many different items in my prop gallery. I mean, there's an awful lot of items, and just about everything I might need. And in here I can find props, effects, so that's special effects, characters like my hero, and monsters and so on, assemblies, which are lots of props plugged together, sound and visual effects that you own. Now, there is very possible that there are props that you haven't bought yet, and I have some props that I haven't bought yet, and they're marked in a special way, so you'll know. Now it says I can filter my view by prop type using the tabs above. Look for something specific. You can also search for a specific prop using the search box on the upper right. So I press A, and it says use your left stick to select the characters tab, and press A to filter your view. So the characters tab looks like a face, a portrait, and I press A, and look at all the different characters. Now I have to choose a character to be my hero. Now I probably won't choose Arctic Tern, because although the Arctic Tern is a lovely bird, it's probably not what I want for my hero. So I'm going to scroll over, and I'm going to select the Woodland Peasant Male. And you can select whoever you like. Some of the items will be locked out. So for example, I have not purchased the Woodland Blacksmith, or the Royal King, or the Royal Queen, or the Zombie. So you'll see that there's a silver coin with a gold bar in the corner, the left hand corner of those. And what that means is that I haven't purchased those yet, so I can't use them. So I'm going to use one of the items I have purchased. You don't have to use the same character I'm using. For example, if you want to use the Woodland Ranger Female, feel free to do so. So I'm going to select this guy here to be my hero, and there he is, and I can see that he's glowing. That's because we haven't actually placed him yet. And you'll see that if I move my right mouse stick, my right Xbox controller stick, I can rotate around the character. So they're doing a full 360-degree around him. And the instruction says press LT, or left trigger, or RT, the right trigger. So left trigger will snap him to the ground. So I'll pull that once and watch how he'll snap to the ground. There we go. And then press RT to place the prop in your world. So we'll move him left and right, and I'm just moving the left stick here until I find where I like him, and that's a good spot there, and then I press the right trigger once. So now he's glowing red because we've just placed him, and you'll notice that there's a blue circle with a blue dot inside it. That is my cursor, and I can move that cursor by moving both the left and the right analog sticks on my controller. And when they move over the character, the controller will actually give a little jump to tell me that I'm over a character. Now, the new instruction in the tutorial says to move the cursor over your hero and hold the left button. So if you haven't used a controller before, the left button is the button on the front of the controller just above the trigger. And it wants me to hold it down, because if I just tap it, it doesn't work. But if I hold it down, a new menu appears. And this menu is over on the right. And it has a number of options. We can edit our character. We can go into the character studio. We can delete our character. Or most importantly, we can have a look at his brain. Now, it's not going to be gross, don't worry, there's no squishy brain bits. This is really cool because this is where we can start doing some of our programming. So I'm going to scroll a little bit closer to our character so we can get up and close to him. And how am I doing that? Well, I can move around my world by pulling backwards and forwards on the left stick. I can then select him and press the Y button to open his brain. Now I'm in the brain editor, where the magic really happens. So what is a brain? Well, it's a series of code statements, that's code with a K, that tell objects how to behave. So if you've ever been told to behave yourself, what does that mean? Well, it means you should act in a certain way. And you should probably behave yourself if you're playing a sport differently than if you're in the library, because they have different type of things you should do in those locations. So we have to decide how our hero behaves. And to do that we use when and do. So when is an event block that says when something has happened, and do is the action we take. So if you were looking at programming this character, the first thing you would decide is what they can do when you press certain buttons on your controller. So when the left stick is pressed, what would they do? So the very first thing we're going to do is make our hero move. So we're starting with a blank brain and there's absolutely nothing there. And we want to tell them how you move. So we press A, and the very first thing it asks us to select is the plus sign beside when, and that adds a condition, so when something happens. So we press that, and now up comes the tile picker, which is a new menu with lots of different code tiles, and there's several pages of code tiles, and they're actually multiple folders with more tiles in them. Now you'll see that it wants us to select controls, and if I rotate my left stick, you can see the little blue selector in the center of the menu allows me to highlight controls, and it's glowing blue, and I press A. So up comes touch controls, keyboard, mouse, input methods, display button, but we're going to go to controller. And at the very bottom it has left stick. So we select that, and this will probably be different if you're using a keyboard and a mouse, but the tutorial will tell you what to select. What do we do? Well, we go to movement and we select move. And again I'm pressing A to select these each time. So when we read this, it says when left stick, do move. So we've written our first line of code, and we better test it out. It's very important to test your code to make sure it works. So it wants us to press B to exit the brain editor, and when we do that we will see that unusually it's now asking us to press menu to open the pause menu. So menu on my controller is the start button, so when I press that, up comes this very new window. The pause menu has many uses. You can switch between edit and test modes, so that's where you're creating or playing. Save your level, share your level, and access properties that affect your entire world. So the very first thing we're going to do is go into the test. That looks like a man running, which is very apt. So this is our game. And when I press the left stick, our character starts to move. Our hero is moving along, And if I point the other direction, he'll turn. Now he's moving very slowly, but I'm only pressing the left stick very slowly. If I move it a little bit more, he starts to walk a bit faster, faster. Oh, he's gone into a jog, and now he's really running. And I can make him run in circles just by moving the left stick in circles. I can make him run off into the distance, and I can make him come back. Now none of the other buttons work, and if you're wondering why, well, that's because we didn't program them to do anything. So our character will only react to instructions in his brain that he's been given, and we only told him to respond to the left stick. So now we press menu and go back into edit, and we hold down our left shoulder button and select brain. And now we're going to give our hero the ability to jump. So we press when, controls, controller, A is pressed, do, movement, jump. And it's now asking us to add a modifier. So a modifier affects the tile that comes before it. So we want to select what happens. When we press the A button, our character should only jump once, and then we have to let go of the button to press it again. So you'll notice that when you create certain bricks, a new modifiers brick appears, and in there you can see things like the A button is pressed, it's just been released, and lots of other options. We're going to go with pressed. So it now reads, when the A button has been pressed, do a jump, but that means the button has to be released before it'll do a second jump. Now, interestingly, if we hadn't put that in and we held down the A button, our character would go flying up into the sky with lots of jumps, which is not what we really want. So, now another thing we need is a camera. So we want a camera to follow our hero around. And you might think we should say when always follow our hero around. But to do an always block, we just leave when blank. So we go to do, and the right shoulder button brings us to the second page of the menu. We select camera and we select follow camera. So because the when side is empty, the camera will always follow us. So let's try it out. We press B to exit, press menu to open our pause menu, and we select test. And now our character can run around. We can move the camera around him. And I'm moving the camera there by rotating the right analog stick, and then I'm making my character run by pressing the left analog stick. And we said A to jump, so he can jump, and we can run and jump. And we can do a double jump, so we press jump, and he does an extra little jump in the air. That's kind of hard to do in real life, but easy to do in computer games. So we now know that we can control the camera, we can control our character, and we can make him do actions like jump. What's next? So we're going back into his brain by holding the left shoulder button and pressing Y. And in there it says, let's make your hero attack when you press the X button. So we say when on our controller the X button is pressed, do an attack. And now we're going to do a ranged attack. So if our character had, say, a bow and arrow, a ranged attack would fire an arrow. However, the default ranged weapon for firing a projectile or a missile is a fireball. So remember, don't throw fireballs at your brothers and sisters at home. It's very naughty. So when, select controls, again moving the left analog stick to controller, selecting Y, then we say do, selecting combat, selecting shoot. Okay, so the default projectile is a fireball. It's time to test out the code. We press B to exit. We press the start button to open the menu. We select test. And now our character can run around, and he can throw a punch, and he can jump, punch that way, and he can throw fireballs. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Now, he's got no one to throw fireballs at, but he can throw them. So at this point, hopefully your character is running around and they're throwing punches, they're jumping, and they're throwing fireballs. So we're going to come back out into the menu now and select Edit. And our next section is to add an enemy. So in the 5 main parts of creating this tutorial, adding an enemy is very important because this is the guy we're going to be our adversary to fight. Now don't worry, it won't be too scary because our enemy is going to come from our list of props. So we press A and it says use the D-pad to select the goblin, so we have to go to our right, and that's not a goblin, this is a goblin. So as you can see, he's not a very friendly looking guy. He's got big sharp claws and he looks like he hasn't gone to a dentist in a long time, and he's got big floppy ears. He looks a little bit funny in some ways, but he is a bad guy. So we're going to bring him a little bit away from the hero, and we're going to press the left trigger to snap him to the ground. There he is. And we press the right trigger to place him. So we're going to place him here. Now we're going to start him off with his back to the player. Now, instead of coding his brain from scratch, we can select a pre-made brain for our fierce little goblin from the brain library. So our goblin here, his brain right now is blank, but we actually have a library of brains we can use. We could tell him that he was a bird and should fly away if he sees something scary. We could tell him he was a squirrel or a critter, and he would think he was, but we're not going to do that. We're going to tell him he's a fierce goblin. So we move our cursor over the goblin, we hold down the left shoulder button, and we see the brain menu again, and we press Y. Now, normally goblins' brains aren't blank, but this is a tutorial, so it's giving us a blank brain. And now it's time to press the menu button to open the brain options. So when I press that, there's quite a number of options there. There's a brain gallery at the very top, and that's what we're interested in. If we were making a new brain, we might be saving our brain. So we're going to go into the brain gallery, and okay, there's a lot of brains in here. Now, if you've ever seen a brain, you'll know that it's doesn't look very nice, and hopefully you don't see too many brains. Maybe you're a zombie and it's your dinner, but hopefully not. But here you see that all the brains have names like first person shooter, third person adventurer, third person hoverflight. So these are all different types of things our characters in Project Spark can do. These are behaviors, and we can actually drop a behavior on a character and they'll start to do that particular thing. So new brains are always being added to the library with each content pack or when you create or save one. So think about this, you could make your own brains. So I'm going to select OK. It wants me to find the enemy brain. So we're going to actually have to search for this. So we use our left stick to go to our search and we type in enemy. E-N-E-M-Y. So the enemy brains are enemy scavenger brain, enemy lights brain, and then enemy brain, and that's the one we want. So we select that, and it says press B to exit the brain options menu. So we press that, and it says press B to exit the brain editor. So we've got this very complex brain here with lots of steps, and I'm not going to look at those, but you can see that there's an awful lot of possibilities there. Lots of different things happen in this brain, and there could be several pages of brain to do very complex things. But all we have to know right now is that this is a brain which tells the goblin that he doesn't like me and that he will attack me. That's not very nice. So we open up the pause menu and press test, and here he comes. Maybe he's coming to say hello. No, that doesn't look very friendly. He's slapping me. That's not very nice. Now we can punch him back. Oh, so we can hit him back, and we can throw a fireball at him, and that was the end of him. So you can see that he explodes in a magic puff. So he's gone. But don't worry, he's not completely gone. When we press the start menu and go back to edit, it says, amazing, you've conquered basic programming and created a stalwart hero and a fearsome enemy. But now this empty world around them needs some help. Let's get to work and create an awesome backdrop for their battle. So just one thing to notice here, that even though we defeated the goblin and he disappeared, when we go back into edit mode, everything is reset into its original place. So don't worry if you do something wrong when you're playing the game. You can always come back out and create a change or modify your world, and it will reset back in edit mode. So we say OK, and at this point it says, you've got a hero, you've got some enemies, but they need a world to adventure in. Let's use sculpting, painting, and a few props to give it some life. So that's our next section now, to make a mountain. So to make a mountain, we're going to use some new tools. So we press A, and it tells me that a mountain is your next challenge to conquer. Now we're not going to make too big of a mountain, don't worry. We're going to press A to switch tools and press up on our left stick, and you'll see that we have the expand tool. So this is a sculpting tool, and we're going to control our camera. And remember I talked about moving our cursor around? Well, this is our cursor, and you can see the way that it's a sphere or an orb, and it intersects the plane of the ground, and that intersection glows an orange color. Now I can rotate my camera around that by pressing on a direction on the right analog stick, and I can move this cursor up and down. So that's underneath the ground, that's above the ground. Here it's only intersecting the ground in a very small place. Here it is completely over our goblin. Wherever the cursor is, I can rotate around with the camera to see what's happening. I can hold down the right shoulder button and press the left stick to zoom out. So here I am zooming out. So I can see a lot more of the world. So now that we hopefully understand how to use our camera and our cursor, we press A, and it says mold your world in sculpt mode. Modify, raise, lower, or create terrain. There's a whole set of tools to use, and each one has an opposite. To sculpt, use the right trigger and move your brush over the terrain. In expand mode, your brush will raise the terrain, and in erode mode, it will reduce the terrain. So let's try it out. Let's start our hero at the very foot of the mountain, and we press the right trigger only slightly, and you might see that the ground has raised very slightly. Let's pull it once more. That's a little bit of a hill, but on the goblin we'll raise it a little bit higher, and it says we're off to a good start, but this will go a lot faster with a bigger brush. You're right. So we come over here, and it says while holding the left button, use the left stick to select scale. So a new menu appears when we hold down the left button, and you have to hold it down, don't let go. And we press left and right, we can see different options, and scale is the one we want, and we're going up to 100%. Okay, so now we start pulling the right trigger to make the mountain. You'll notice I'm making it in steps, so it's easy to climb up the mountain. Now hopefully that's not too steep of a mountain. It might be a little bit steep, hopefully not too steep. And we'll finish off our mountain here, and then we're going to come down. So what did I do there? Well, I'm going to zoom out to show you. We hopefully have created a mountain. We'll just orbit around it there. That should be steep enough, but not too steep to climb up. But it might be a little steep. It might be hard to get up some sections of that. Maybe we could erode away a bit of it. So it says Okay, the expand brush is great for adding to terrain, but sometimes you need to carve it away. Let's switch to erode and carve some contours into your mountain. So when we pull the left trigger and move the brush, it will remove the excess earth. So I'm going to move very little. You can see the way it removes the earth there. And we're going to remove a little bit up here to make it easier to climb the mountain. And that should make it a bit easier to climb. And we'll come down here and erode some bits here. So we have a bit of a lake going here. And we moved too much. Look, we've added, we haven't added, we've added a hole by eroding too much terrain. But we can undo that. So you actually see down here it says, don't worry about mistakes. It's safe to experiment and you can try new things in Project Spark because you can undo actions. Press the view button, which on my controller is the back button, at any time to undo your last action. So let's undo what went happen there. And there we go. So it's fixed that small problem. So I'm going to come out and erode away a little bit more. And we'll erode away a bit there. So it's a strange mountain, but it's our Project Spark mountain. I think it's very, very nice. So we'll remove a bit there. So there's our mountain, and it says we can use the view button at any time to undo our last action, but we can also scrub. So that means that if we did lots of things wrong and want to remove them all, we can hold down the view button and press the right stick to remove items we don't like. So now it says, look, your brush intensity is very strong. Maybe you should reduce it so that you don't accidentally delete your whole mountain. So we hold down the left stick and move our our controller over to intensity and use the right stick to reduce that all the way down to 10%. So now when we're sculpting the mountain, it doesn't remove very much. Oh, undo that. And come out a little bit there, and look, we can just sculpt away our mountain and give it some nice features like that. So our mountain is getting a bit craggier. That's okay, that's what mountains do. Okay, so I think that's our mountain created. And we say okay, and it says, well, it's time to add some color to your mountain. I mean, I don't go climbing mountains a lot, but when I see them, they usually don't look quite like this. Usually they have some green or grass on them. So I think it's time to make the mountain look more like a mountain. So it says press the A button to switch tools, and then use the left stick to navigate to the paint tool, and press A again to select it. So we go up to the paint tool, and it says, right, this is paint mode. This is where you add different colors and materials to your world. Use the D-pad to switch materials on the paint palette at the bottom of the screen. The arrow button right above the palette opens the paint gallery, which has even more materials to select from. So use the right trigger to paint some magic into your world. So that's interesting. It's now time to do some painting. So I'm going to move the D-pad over to this block here. It says temperate woodland, and it's got some cliff underneath and some green on the top. And I move my cursor over our hero here, and I press the right trigger, and it's added some grass. That's quite interesting. And you can see the intensity is 66%, and if I move along and pull the trigger, it's adding grass to my mountain. And you can notice it's adding cliffs to the sides. And if I hold down the trigger and move the stick, it just paints it all on, which is very cool. So finally, we're going to come up here on top of the mountain And I think that's the whole mountain colored in. So we've just painted grass and rocks onto a mountain. That is very cool. So we're going to come back down now here to our hero. So we now have our hero, we have our adversary, our goblin, and we have a big mountain right in front of us. We press A now that we're done. And the next section is to make a path. So we want to make a path, and it says we've made an interesting landscape, but how will your hero know where to go? The solution is simple. It's time to make a path. So we choose a background material to paint the ground beneath the path. Now we've already painted a lot of the ground, but we'll paint a bit more. So we select our D-pad over here, and it says while holding the left button, use the left stick to select scale, and then tilt the right stick to adjust the size of your brush. So we use the D-pad to go over to scale and reduce the size of the brush. So I'm going to paint just a small area here, a nice green, just before we get to the mountain. So the mountain is a darker color. Okay, we press A and it says right now pick a contrasting material for your path. Let's pick something from the gallery. Okay, so we move our D-pad over and then press up, and there's a selection of new materials which appear, and this is the paint gallery. It contains all the different materials you can use. Now some materials are locked until you've used Project Spark enough, and some you have to purchase, but there's lots of materials you can use straight away. So you can select whichever material you like. It's going to replace the material that I was on, and I'm selecting Stone Path. You might have Scorched Path. So I select Stone Path and I press B to exit the gallery, and now it wants me to paint a path to connect my hero to the mountain. I'm going to reduce the size of my paintbrush. Okay, and then I pull the right trigger to make the path, and you can see that the path goes by our friendly goblin. He's not really friendly, and it goes up the mountain. It's going to have some bits which are hard to climb in this mountain. He's going to have to do a lot of jumping, I think, especially here. We might have to resculpt our mountain. Let's see if he can get all the way to the top. It's going to be a challenge, especially that bit there. We'll see. But we've got a path up the mountain. So we press A and it says, right, this is a good path, but I could do with a bit of sprucing up to make things more interesting. How about some coins to pick up? Well, that sounds cool. Press the A button to switch tools, then use the left stick to navigate to the prop tool, and press A again to select it. Okay, so we press down on our left stick, select the prop, then we press the up arrow on the D-pad, and now we want to search for coins. So we remove the word enemy, we type in coin, and there's our coin. There's also a coin pile, but we just want coin. Now when we press left trigger to snap the coin to the ground, we'll zoom in a little bit, not too close, and there is our coin. And we're going to put a number of coins in the world. So there's our first one. We can put as many coins as we like, but we're going to make them a little path. And you notice that I'm moving to the position I want, and you can see the red line showing that I'm kind of underneath the ground and you can't really see my coin, but if I press left trigger you can see it. So we can start placing our coins like this. So the left trigger makes my coin snap to the ground. I will put one, I think, up here. Not too many coins, but enough to make it exciting that our hero's trying to get the coins. Oh, and we'll put a few coins here, and that's all the different coins we can collect. So when we're finished placing our coins, we press B, and it says, what about a little vegetation? How about a tree? Okay, so we press the up arrow, and it says it's time to look for a tree. So I delete the word coin and type in the word tree, T-R-E-E. And lots of different trees. Now some trees you won't have because they're parts of content packs that you have to buy, and some trees you will have. So I like this woodland tree. I think it's a nice looking tree, and I'm going to press so I think that looks nice there, and I'm going to press right trigger to place it. And this is not bad, but maybe a little bit bigger and rotate it. So I press A, move my cursor over it, and press right trigger to grab it. And it says while holding the left button, use the left stick to select scale, then tilt the right stick to change the tree's size. So I hold down the left button and we can scale the tree up. That's a bigger tree. And then we can tilt our right stick down a little bit to about 190. I think that's a nice shaped tree, and press OK. And then again, holding the left button, use the left stick to select rotate Y, and the right stick to rotate the tree around. We can see some of the roots are sticking out, and we might want to rotate it so that the roots are like that. We press A when we're done. Maybe we should reposition it. So we use the left stick and the X and Y buttons to position it. So that's not a good position there because it's a floating tree, and we don't want floating trees in our game. And this is not a good position because it's buried inside the mountain. So we can lift it up a little bit. And there we go, that's a good position. The tree's not buried in the mountain, but it's positioned nicely along the path. And we press A when we're done. So it says awesome job. Now your hero has a summit to conquer, a path to follow, treasure to find, and battles to fight. The next section is to create a goal. So we want to create a goal, and that means that we're going to create the part of the game where our player and our hero knows what they have to do. Now it may be something that's easy or something hard, but a goal is something that they want to achieve, they want to do. So it now says, this is a grand adventure for your hero, but all journeys must eventually end. And we're going to create a goal for your player, and the game will end once they achieve it. So we want to press the D-pad to open the prop gallery, and it wants me to type in our search button the word flag. So I delete the word tree and I type in flag. And you'll see that there's a village flag. So we select village flag and we place it somewhere accessible. Now I really should test this to make sure I can get to the top of the mountain, because we could create a goal that the player can't achieve. And you really shouldn't do that, because that's very frustrating if your players or your friends who are playing can't actually win your game. That's a little bit unfair. But we're going to place our flag there. Now we can actually put a brain on the flag. You can put a brain on almost any object. You could make a coin think it's a monster. You can do all sorts of cool things with brains. But on this flag, we're going to do two things. We're going to detect when the player has reached it, and we're going to display a victory message and end the game. Okay, so we move our cursor over the flag, press the left button, and the new menu appears, and we select brain. So first we have to detect when the player reaches the flag using the bump sensor. So we select when sensors detect a bump, and you see two apples bumping each other. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're only sensing the player, because the goblin might bump into the flag. So we say another plus on the when, objects, player. So when I'm bumped by the player, what should we do? Well, you can see that we're on page 1 of our brain, but we can actually add more brains. So we can actually have a victory page. So we say do, and you'll notice that we want to press the right shoulder button to move to brains section, and in there it'll say switch page. So now we can switch to a new page, and you'll notice that that's not enough. We have to tell it where to switch to. So we say a new page. So we're changing states here. So and it even gives you an example. It's like from being asleep and being awake. You can't be both at once. So there's 2 different states. So switch page and next page tells the brain to stop running the current page and start running the next page. So now it's time to go over and make the new page. So we press the right button and we have a blank page. So we need to do something on this page. So anything you want to happen when the player reaches the flag should go on this page. A good place to start is with a simple victory message. So we'll say do, appearance, display, values, ABC text, new text, and we better enter something. Now we can put anything we want to be displayed here when players reach the flag, but because they've reached a goal, we should say something to do with that. So I'm going to write well done and an exclamation mark. So we can also modify where the message will show up and how big it will be. So we select another tile, and this time we select modifiers, positioning, screen location, center of screen, and another tile with another modifier and the font size to be extra large font. This is going to be very big. So let's test that this works. So we exit with B, and then we select menu and we select test. Here comes the goblin. I'm going to run around him, pick up some gold coins. Oh, and we have to jump up parts of the mountain. That's expected. And you'll notice that the gold coin brain is giving me the number of coins I've picked up. Keep going all the way to the top of the mountain. And what happens when I bump into the flag? It says well done, right there in the center of the screen. So we know that the goal is achievable. And we didn't get all the gold coins, but we got most of them. There's our friend the goblin. Oh, he's not very friendly. And it's now time to come back out and go back into edit mode. So it says your goal works, but it doesn't really end the game yet. Okay, so that's a good point. So how do we end the game? Well, we go back over the flag and press our left shoulder button again and press Y for brain. And we want to go to our victory page. And it says after the victory text is displayed, the screen should fade to black and the game should end. So we go down to the do block and we select appearance, display, fade. How long should it take to fade? Modifiers, transition time, a transition is a change, and values, number, a new number. So I think we're going to go with 3 seconds. That's how long it takes. To actually end the game, simply use the game over tile. So do, appearance, display, game over. Now the when side of the line is empty, which means the game over tile will run immediately when this brain switches to page 2. We can use a countdown timer to delay this line's execution by a few seconds, which will give the screen a chance to fade out and display the victory message. So we go back to the when side and select timing and logic, countdown timer, values, number, a new number, and we're going to enter 4. Now this line won't run until the countdown timer has finished counting down the specified number of seconds, and it should be a little bit more than the fade out time as well. Now put your game to the now time to put the game over transition to the test. So we press B to exit, press the menu and press A to test. So now we're going and we're running up the mountain, It's not timing us, so we can just run. Here we get to the top, and well done. Screen fades out, and it's game over. Now, when we're in test mode, when it's game over, it'll always bring us back here to our edit mode. But in play mode, it'll go to an end game screen. So it says, thanks for checking out a tutorial preview for 3D Adventure. Check back in future releases for more tutorials and even bigger adventures. Don't forget to save your level from the pause menu, then head back out into play mode to check it out. So I hope you've enjoyed that tutorial. You can continue creating, you can make lots more changes, you could add more trees or more enemies or more coins. Experiment with it and see what you can do. And do remember to save your level, because this might be the first level you've ever made, and it's a nice level to show people, to show that you've made a hero, an enemy, a mountain, you've coloured it in, and then you've made a goal and had lots of props to interact with. So I think people will enjoy playing your game. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial, and we're going to next see how we can do even more things with Project Spark. So now that we've used the tutorials to create a game which had a character and a mountain and a goal, you're probably getting a lot of ideas for the type of games you might want to create yourself with Project Spark. And that's a good thing. So in the next module, module 4, we're going to dig deeper and see what we can do with our characters using code. And that's coming up next. I hope you'll join me.